Hey guys, regardless what you're building, there's a lot of cool tips, tricks, and just some normal everyday guidance. I hope you stick around and watch it all. All right, guys, let's get into this instruction manual. I am going to start at the beginning of the book for you and work my way through. Again, this is the Seagull's Model 50cc Extra 330LX from Gator-Rc. You can start at the beginning of the manual and work your way through. Personally, my OCD, I wanted to start with the fuselage, but we're following the directions just as you would have it in your box. So let's get to it. Couple things to note. Again, the hinges are already pre-installed, so they're ready to go. They are starting here with the horns, the linkage, the servos. I still am going to alter this a little bit for the sake of making the most out of my epoxy. I am using Hysol 9462. This is slow cure epoxy. Important things get to sit for a long time. I don't want to use quick drying epoxy. I want that stuff to really soak into the wood and those control horns. So with the control horns being installed, every one of these for the elevator and the aileron are exactly the same. You can't go wrong. And the ones for the rudder are going to be different, just like such. Couple of the things you're going to need, again, the Hysol. I put all my hardware there in the kit. Need some different tapes. My sanding bar to rough up these control horns. I already installed the bolt and stuff there, and we are going to use a laser to basically run the laser right down the hinge line, and I actually want to see that be dead center on that bolt right there. The better the build, the better it's going to fly. The more neutral it's going to fly, the more control deflection you're going to get in both directions and not just be limited to one way. We want the plane to fly as well upside down as right side up. Getting the control horn centered over that surface is going to be key to our build, and that's what I'm hoping to do by putting these horns in with the laser, is make them pinpoint accurate. It's worked out on a lot of other builds, and I'm hoping the same here. Again, hinges are already done. I've already taped this one off. I want to create a little bit of fillet right in the inside in here. So I'm actually going to pop this out for you. And you can see where I have that lined off. We want to coat the inside of that really well with epoxy all over the inside. We want to get it on both sides of the hinge the control horn. One thing to note here, these will pull out if you don't sand them. So we're going to, as we go through the time lapse, you must scuff up both sides of these, and some people even go through and drill a few holes, which would also be acceptable. I haven't drilled holes. I've had great luck with just making sure those are really sanded, but you cannot leave them smooth like that and get them to install. They will come out. I did this, and the reason I'm not going to do the servos and stuff right out of the gate is because I have my epoxy. I want to do every control horn and every surface all at the same time. That way we're maximizing, or, you know, getting the most out of our epoxy, that we're not constantly squeezing some out and wasting it. All of these have already been preset in. Some things to note here with the ailerons. A couple things that I had to do here for those. I had to trim off the leading edges. So notice how the leading edges of those are cut down a little bit. And that was because the control surface gets thinner here on this inside. And I had to slide these. I had to make the notches a little bit bigger to get the control horns to move far enough front in order to be on the hinge line. And by doing that, you start to poke those corners through the other side so we don't ruin it. We just cut the edges off and tapered them. So we're going to get to installing all of our control horns here, and we'll chase back once these are all dry tomorrow and start servo installation. So let's get the time lapse. All of the control horns are now installed. We're taped off. The epoxy is going to sit in there for about a half an hour before I pull that tape off. That'll leave those fillets nice and clean. We used our laser. It was a little hard to see on this white surface, so I had to shut the light off briefly just to make sure the laser was hitting all of my hinge points, but everything looks great. 25 minutes, we'll take the tape off. All of this stuff will cure overnight before I start messing with it, so that way it doesn't move. We'll get the servos put in and all the linkage. We'll see you then. So we got a couple things accomplished here, and I just wanted to show you. So number one, you're going to have to elongate the servo pockets in order to get these 3511s in there. They're just slightly bigger than the pockets that are, you know, pre-drilled, if you will. Remember, you want to open the pocket that way if you have to open it, so that way you still have room up here for your screws. Don't keep cutting out here where it's thin. All the wood surrounding that pocket, I then wick with thin CA to harden that, and we wound up putting a servo wire holder on the inside, so that way this thing does not get caught up and get pinched in our servo arm. Those are 1.5-inch servo arms there, monster ball links with 3mm 2-inch in length titanium rods. And then you can see we use some hardware here just to dazzle it up. Now check out these. So these are 1mm carbon fiber plating that I had RJX Hobby make for me. I wound up sending them the DJX file for that. That really cleans up that pocket here. You can see one without it. So I'm still waiting on a couple of these to come in. That one was from when I used on the Carf, so I'm using the exact same pieces for the same reason, to cover up them pockets. I just like the way it looks. Now, this was that broken tab that we were dealing with. I wicked some CA in there just to hold it. And then what I wound up doing on the inside here, I just trimmed the covering away from this corner, and I filled it with a high-sol epoxy, and I mixed a little bit of black paint in there to give it the black hue, and basically made a fillet in that corner and dropped a very small 1mm carbon rod right up against it, so it has some strength that's butted up in there. And then I filled in the gap here, so I'll sand that down a little bit. Even if I don't, it's not the end of the world, but I'll sand that down a little bit, and that thing, when it finally fully cures, should be more than good. So that's our elevators, and our ailerons are done also on our wings. Now we're into the rudder pull system, and I had to elongate those slots a little bit so that way I could get this thing pushed far enough front. You have to make sure whatever holes you're going to use or plan on using are in line with the hinge point. If they are not on the hinge point, you're going to wind up with slop in your rudder pull cable, and you're only going to have tension one way and you're going to have tons of slop the other. And where that hurts you is the kickback of the rudder, especially in a -G. You're starting to do, you know, a slide, a tail slide, or something like that. You don't want that snapping of that wire, because that's really hard on it and could break it. So you want to make sure that you elongate the slots enough that whatever hinge you're going to use is right on, whatever hole you're going to use, that it's right on that hinge point. So we've gone ahead and removed those and sanded them down. So you can see how I've already got those roughed up. And then what we are going to do is fill that gap full of epoxy, slide those in, measure everything side to side, make sure it's even, and we're going to let that sit overnight. And then tomorrow we're going to get this thing installed on the fuselage and probably get the rudder pull setup done. So I think landing gear is about there too. When you look at the book, that's the next step. So after you get all the linkage here and stuff done, and the ailerons and elevator half linkage done, they have you going into the rudder pull. I think I would like that thing to be on its feet by then, so I might jump ahead, but we'll see. Let's get to it. All right, the fuselage is on the bench, and it is time to get started getting this rudder assembly put in there. The rudder control horns have dried, and they are epoxied in there really well. Gave those things a really hard pull. They are in there nice and solid, and by opening up those grooves and channels, I was able to get the control horn holes in line with the hinge. Say that 3 times fast. Now on this thing, this rudder is just simply held in with the fiberglass hinges in the back. That makes it really nice and simple and quick to assemble. We're going to go ahead and line that up and simply slide this rod through the bottom to hinge everything. There's a lot of big planes that use that, so this doesn't scare or bother me at all. It will be just fine. And then we use simply a piece of tape on the bottom to keep the rod from falling out. With that being said, I do have the irons cooking up because we have a couple pieces of covering there that I want to tidy up before I get this thing into place. Again, not a big deal. So now that the fuselage is on the bench, there's a couple things that I wanted to cover with you that I missed in the unboxing. Good, bad, or indifferent. A little positive and a little negative, if you will. Number one, at the bottom of this fuselage, I thought these stringers were balsa stringers. And the problem with these balsa wood stringers, if you've ever dealt with a bigger plane before and had them on an engine stand or on an airplane stand or whatever, these things will sag, they bend, they break. You're moving it around. It's easy to put your hand there and crack these things. But these are all carbon. These are little square tubes, all right? They're, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch thick, and they go from all the way in the back to all the way up to the front by the landing gear. Actually up to the firewall, as you can see there. So that's actually really, really nice. I like that feature. It is perfect. Now, the I thought it was, like I said, painted stringers. It is not. It is carbon. The downside, the firewall box here, I do like how they put this fiberglass sheet. I like how everything is sealed. I like the fact that this motor box is actually the ply that runs all the way down through the fuselage. Good or bad, if you break the motor box off this, more is going than just the motor box. So anyway, here at the top, I didn't notice this before. This thing isn't really glued into place really well, and that's simply because the tabs are misaligned. This is not an end of the world deal. This is a little trim with an X-Acto knife, glue it or tack it back into place, run a bead of epoxy, and we're going to call it a day. Very simple fix and not a problem. It has nothing to do structurally with the plane. It may support this piece for the nose and the cowling a little bit more, but we'll get that fixed up and get this thing ready. But otherwise, the next step per the manual is to get this rudder on. And I initially wanted to get gear on this thing beforehand. I really don't care now that it's on the bench. It's not going to be a big deal to get the pull system done on this thing. It should be fairly straightforward and easy, not a problem. And then the next step in the book will definitely be getting the gear on, the pants on, the spats, things like that. And at this point, it's starting to feel very quickly like we're going to bang this plane together. So let's get to work. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and talk rudder pull. So number one, whatever hole you're going to use has to be on the hinge line or you wind up with slop in the lines. We've already covered that. So that horn is set up to give me, I should have plenty of throw using the outer holes, and the next one in is pretty close to that, so we'll have to see how everything fares out, but I'm sure I'll get more than enough throw there because I'm also using a 4-inch arm all the way up here. But whatever set of holes you're using from this side to the other side has to be the same distance apart as the set of holes up here. So that's why I went with the 4-inch arm. When you do this rudder pull, they give you some pretty nice cables, and we're going to just walk through one side. You can see the other side here is already done. So we have our monster links there with our nice anodized pieces. We use the proper crimpers, and we put some nice heat shrink over that just to give it some aesthetics. So first things first, we're going to just take this cable And let's go ahead and actually slide this whole thing up. And so we're not bopping around. I'm going to set you guys right there. How's that sound? We're going to take our really nice rudder pull. Now they said that these are crossed in the manual. So that's what we will do with them, is we will cross them. And when you cross them, you have to use an offset arm. So that works out nice. That's what we have up here. So we'll run that cable all the way up. First thing we're going to slide on is our piece of heat shrink up the cable like so. We're going to slide on our crimp here, and we are going to go through that eyelet, and we are going to make a nice gentle bend all the way around. Now, if you're using just the regular barrel style crimp, I actually like to circle mine back a third time. So essentially you would have 3 cables in it. Now the ones that are included in the kit are what I'm using here. I did not buy a separate rudder pull system. You can, they are out there, but it looked like the one in the kit here was pretty nice. So if it was just a barrel style, I would do this, and then I would loop back around and go back through again. So that way it made it hard to pull it back around. But this will work fine because you can only feed that through twice. I'm going to slide this crimp down pretty far, but not all the way. I don't want to pinch that cable in there and turn it into a V. I still want it in a nice circular shape. And then we're going to take a nice pair of crimpers like this, made just for this task. I like to make sure that I'm pretty close to the other side as far as looks go. Well, it should be about good. And we're simply just going to take these and squish them. And the nice part is you're not going to cut the cable. If you use diagonal cutters to do this, very often you'll cut right through everything, and that gives you a super, super nice heavy-duty crimp. And then I'm going to take a pair of diagonal cutters, and I'm just going to cut not all of it, but some of that slop off right there. Make sure this is up all the way. And then we are going to go ahead and heat this thing up and shrink it. It doesn't take much to make that shrink. Now, one of the other things you're going to notice that I did here is I actually centered the rudder with tape, so that's all held into place. All my ends are about the same length there. Those are fished all the way up through the fuselage. And if we have a look on the inside here, let's throw some light in the inside of that so maybe you guys can see. Now, as our cables come up here, we're going to cross them. Sometimes I'll put a stick back there through the fuselage so they don't rub across each other. But I've powered up the servo and centered this thing, so I know where that belongs, and I just put these on loosely. Now, what I'm going to do here is I am going to slide over, and I'll show you another trick. I have to get tape. Where's my tape? I guess I'll just use this. Get a couple pieces of electrical tape. Any tape will work. Doesn't need to be anything special. And just by simply doing this, it'll keep your stuff from sliding all the way down the pull where you have to go fish it out of the back of the fuselage. So we're going to go ahead and feed over our cable there and there, and we are going to feed over on this one, that thing, and there. Make sure those are crossed. So this one's going to come over here to this side. And now I'm simply going to pull that one through. There. I get this one through here. And see how nice that was? I don't have to go fish. I'll pull this up. And the reason I'm going to do this is simply because I want to make sure all my geometry is right before I start pulling things and crimping them, because once you crimp, you can't uncrimp. And once you cut, you can't uncut. So you know what they say, measure twice, cut once. And I've found that this is the easiest way, is just to get everything in the back set, and that's fine. And then work on the stuff up front. Get everything set up to the way you think you want it, and then test it out. So let's finish getting this put together and we'll check it. All right, guys, so this is why we test fit things. I'm not super happy with this at the moment. So this is spot on right here. This is exactly where I like my tension to be. But you can see here as I start to rotate, I still keep that tension, but it starts to get just a little bit looser than I like. And through measurements, just not wide enough. I need to be just a little bit wider. So this is a 4-inch arm. I need a 4.5-inch arm because I literally need to slide that out maybe a 1/16 of an inch here and a 1/16 inch in there in order to keep that right. So that means we have to order another servo arm, but we kind of have this mocked up for now, which is good. And we're going to go get into some landing gear. All right, guys, and that wraps up this portion of the build series. If there was something here that piqued your interest or that you liked, do me a favor, head on over to Gator-Rc and check them out at www.gator-rc.com. They have a huge line of balsa ARFs and tons of accessories to go along with them. So with that being said, it's Brendan here at Just Plain Crazy. If you liked it, smash that thumbs up button. It helps out the channel a lot. Comment down below if there's a project you're starting or if they carry a plane that you're interested in. I'd actually be really interested to know what you guys like. With that being said, like, share, subscribe, and all that cool stuff that goes along with that. I hope you join me again for the rest of this video series and more down the road. So with that being said, happy flights, guys. Peace out.